This episode of the Beyond the Physics podcast is brought to you by you. So if you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a rating and review and consider subscribing at patreon.com/Beyond the Physics. This is Beyond the Physics. Just going to start us off. So, what's up? Today we are joined by our good friend Michael.
Hello.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And so, on today's podcast, I thought we might get some of Michael's experience through grad school and maybe try and make some connections to some of the traumatic shit that's been happening with me in my experience. But so before we start talking about all that, just how you doing, Michael?
I'm doing pretty good. Was sick recently, but now I'm better. And caffeine from my Red Bull is finally starting to hit, so I'm waking up and it's the afternoon. But yeah. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you were talking about brain fog earlier. How are you feeling about that right now?
Definitely could be sharper, but memories are sharp enough that I should be able to recall them. But if you're going to ask me like to integrate something complex right now or anything like some spherical harmonic stuff, no, I got nothing.
That's okay. Okay, we'll try to take it easy on you then.
Okay, good.
We'll keep the test to a minimum.
Okay.
But yeah, so where do you think we should start? Like we can start all the way back in time, or like when you're a baby, or we can start when you come into grad school, or what do you think sounds most interesting to you?
I think it's important to start with why I'm doing it.
By it, you mean physics?
Physics and specifically astronomy, and my main passion in the many subfields, observational astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a why before all of the fun
Background.
story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
so because
interesting.
then it establishes that I am still motivated and not letting this all get me down completely. So the first thing when I think of why I was interested in going into physics and astronomy is Star Trek.
Okay.
And Star Trek The Next Generation. And I know that's like a cliche thing probably, that like gather a room full of physicists and like just like pick people at random, and you've got pretty good odds that someone will be like, oh yeah, when I saw Star Trek and I saw them use the teleporter or like the phasers, it was so cool. But for me it was kind of like the travel aspect of like not only going to a new place but like a completely new planet. And just the idea that like there could be so much out there, because the show was, yeah, they were in a cool ship with guns and photon torpedoes, but it was always explained that they were on a mission of exploration. And I thought that was really cool. And I think there's like the phrase that's like born too late to explore the earth and born too early to explore the universe, but I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah.
Because the first, like, part of exploration is looking out. So like if there's not a guy in the crow's nest looking out with his telescope and spotting land, then the ship doesn't know where to go. So I've always been fascinated by looking out and seeing what I could see. And the idea that, yeah, there's things on Earth we haven't seen yet, but like they're here. The idea that we can like, there's still stuff in the sky that like, not only can we not see yet, but its light hasn't reached us yet. And that's, I don't know, that's really exciting to me is that it's like you hear all about like, oh, there's this light from millions of light years away, so it took millions of years to get here, so it feels kind of like a dead science, but it's not. It's like incredibly active and lively, and all the time new stuff's coming in, even though it's already happened, so to speak. And the supernova's reference frame, we're not seeing that yet, and so like got to be on our toes a little bit. And so I would say that when I got my first telescope in high school, because there was one Christmas where I was like, okay, I don't need more Legos, or I already have the newest Halo game or something, you know. I was just like, I want a telescope. And so my parents are divorced, so I told my mom and dad, like, you guys get together, combine your gifts, because if only one of you gets me the telescope, it's not going to be very good. Like, I want something with a little bit more power. And so I got an 8-inch Dobsonian, which are the ones that look like cannons. Yeah. Pretty common for like intro labs, because they're manual, so you can't just like type in like a code and have it point. So I really had to learn the night sky. Like, I read all about it in books and seen the Hubble images, but it was getting my first telescope was like, it was my turn to like try this exploration. And I remember looking at Saturn for the first time. I was with two friends because I had like just gotten it. And one of them was like, what's that star over there? And I was like, I don't know, but I think I know how to find out. So I pointed the telescope and looked in, and I just like yelled. I was like, holy shit, guys, it's Saturn. You can see the rings.
Oh, wow.
Like, and it was really tiny. Like, it was like the size of like a doorknob from like across the room. Nothing like what I'd seen in the books, and yet infinitely cooler. Because it was live, so to speak. Like, that is not a picture that is updating every Planck second, I guess, the smallest. Like, it's constantly something's happening, even if it doesn't look like it. And so I remember reading about, as a kid, comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, which was a comet that people saw actually hit Jupiter. Like, they were actually observing the planet, and something happened. Like, the comet collided, and so then they, being astronomers, they like contacted other people, and so all the world's telescopes, so to speak, pointed at Jupiter and watched this impact, like the aftermath, unfold. And that, even though it was seen by astronomers, the idea that like, if you're lucky enough and you're looking out, you could be the one who discovers something.
Yeah. And that's often the case, right? With like amateur astronomers actually being the ones to make the discoveries for science.
Yeah. Something that has been really interesting to me in terms of like amateur astronomy and astrophotography is it's called IFN, Integrated Flux Nebula. And it's basically just like the collective gas and dust that is, I believe, out like a little bit outside of our galaxy, so like kind of in the halo, but it's illuminated by all the light and stars from our galaxy, and so then some of that comes back. But like, you don't see it. I mean, maybe on like the super high-end sensitive equipment you start to see it, but like really quickly. But for amateur equipment, like, it takes hours of integration time before you start to see it appear in the background, that it's not just noise, but it's something there. Similarly with like dwarf galaxies, several have been discovered by amateurs who are just taking deep exposures of very specific regions in the sky. And so that's something, so it's like, yeah, we have these like all sky maps that are going every night looking for new things like, oh, there's a new supernova there. But it doesn't mean that it's all mapped out, because part of it, it's not just like a surface, but there's depth to it. And so the longer you look at an area and expose, the more you get to see. Similarly, like that's with the Hubble deep fields. Like those are my favorite images. It's my desktop background, like my Chrome when I open a new tab, like instead of just like the blank white, it's the Hubble deep field. Like that image always inspires me, because I know that if I were to like if I
little light flicker,
I know that if I were to get like the super high res version, I could spend hundreds of hours looking, and I would always be able to find something new the next time I go back.
So it's always changing.
Yeah, and
Is it in your background also? It's always changing.
no, I wish. But once I like got to college, in my undergrad, I did some research on gravitational lensing, and that opened up this whole other idea of like time domain astronomy, so to speak, where you got to be looking at the certain time for things to align. So with these massive gravitational like lenses from clusters, sometimes there's like very chance coincidental alignments that allow for much higher magnification, so to speak, of the lensed object. And so like I think there was one, people were able to predict like in like 10 years it should line up, and like this object should like get brighter and larger looking, so to speak. And it did. And so I think that's another idea that's super interesting to me, is using the universe as your observatory as well, rather than just the thing you're observing.
Yeah.
Some of the James Webb images, right? One of them had really nice gravitational lensing. That's my background. Is we can't see it here, right? It was S Max or whatever. But anyways, you're talking about light taking millions of years to travel here. The quote from the thing was like some billions of years, right, for some galaxy coming from this gravitationally lensed effect for the light to come here. And I mean, that's super interesting, right? I'm not very well versed in it, but I do find it fascinating as well. I don't know if it's jumping around too much, but I kind of wanted to just ask one quick question about your experience growing up. When you said you first got your telescope and you pointed out the sky. I was wondering what area in the United States, right, that you...
So I was in Alabama, outside of Birmingham. So there was one like quadrant of the sky, so to speak, that I couldn't ever really look at. It was kind of like to the north a bit, just because of city lights.
Right.
But thankfully it wasn't like aligned super with the north, because I could always see Ursa Major, the Big Dipper. And so I saw planets at first. Those were easy. As I said earlier, I saw Saturn. But I honestly quickly got bored of the planets, and I started, because you can kind of always see them regardless of the weather condition. But I started looking for the faint fuzzies, the nebulas in the galaxies. And so Ursa Major is like above the galactic plane, like, so to speak, in the view from the sky, or the view of the sky. And so like you can look out and not get blocked by gas and dust from our galaxy and see other galaxies. And I remember seeing M81 and M82 for the first time. And was just hooked. Like, I don't know. I don't even remember what the original question was.
It was just about like where you observed when you were.
In Alabama. But once I saw my first galaxies, I was like, oh, okay, I want to go to the darkest places I can, because like I can barely see it in my little suburban like neighborhood. So the first time that I was able to go to northern Michigan and use it just truly blew my mind. Where the light from all the stars is so intense that it like feels like it's touching you. Where the Milky Way is not a suggestion, but like it imposes on you.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting because like, so I grew up in California, right? And I grew up in a kind of small town. There, the light pollution wasn't terrible, still kind of bad. But then as I grew up and I moved out and stuff, and I go into Long Beach and LA proper, it's just like the sky is inaccessible to you, right?
It's just gone. You can count the number of stars on your hand. You're like, oh, there's the 2.
Yeah. And so part of me feels like astronomy is a way of connecting to our past or something like that. Like, you know, sometimes I think sometimes I feel jealous of like ancient people, I guess, being able to have that connection with the sky. And I felt a little bit robbed growing up and having that, being deprived of that. Here it's okay, you know. There's like, it's probably a similar situation to what you're describing growing up, right? It's like the direction of school or whatever, you can't really see much.
But if you look away from it, then it's not too bad. And since like this is north of the light, you get to see Earth, you get to see the Big Dipper. And so you can, during the summer, I mean, I guess what's the word, circumpolar? So like some of them never set as long as you're above the equator. But like, I would feel bad if I lived somewhere and I was south of the big city and my favorite area of the sky was just completely blotted out.
Spooky.
Ooh. Hopefully that's not the universe signaling to me that I'm about to live south of a city.
But so and also Irene's gonna go to the Brazil soon, and it's gonna be in a major city, so I don't know how much of the sky you'll see, but
if I travel outside of there,
I was excited to check it out because I've never seen the sky in the southern hemisphere.
Me neither. The furthest I've gone south is Puerto Rico, so I saw just barely, I think it's Omega Centauri, but it was like super low on the southern horizon. So whenever I have friends who travel south of the equator, I'm like, oh, you get to see all new stars. Like, it's a completely foreign night sky. Which should be so cool.
Well, you're coming for a week, so
just a little bit. We'll get to see.
Exciting.
But it's Sao Paulo is like apparently the largest city in the Americas, so I doubt we'll be able to see much, but we'll see. You know, I haven't been there, so.
Well, we can travel somewhere else to see what we can see.
But so, was there more that you wanted to say on the why of coming into observational astronomy?
Like, what about seeing that, like, for the first time, I guess, kind of hooked you?
Because I was one of the few people on the planet I guess in the whole universe, maybe.
Hmm.
Looking at that thing at that moment, and no one was seeing the photons that I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, although it feels like astronomy is a science that's non-interactive, it is in a way. Because, like, yeah, you can't touch it, but if something happens on a short time scale and you get to see it, then that's like a very special connection, so to speak. Like, I'm not religious or spiritual, but like that's probably like the closest I get is when I'm doing like astronomy, because I feel a connection. I'm a part of the universe looking back out at it and appreciating it, and hopefully lucky enough to see something unique. Like in one of my like frames from an astro imaging project, like there was a meteor once streaking through, and I was just like, oh, sweet. Nice. I might be the only person on the planet who saw that meteor come in, because it was really small. I didn't even see it with my eye. So, but I'm pretty sure it was a meteor because it had some color to it, not a satellite streak. But given that there was some green, it could have been an iridium flare from a satellite, like repositioning. But I'm gonna go with meteor because it sounds cooler. And since I don't have spectral lines, I don't know. But yeah, it's something that I just feel like is a part of me. And again, I've said I'm not religious or spiritual, but that feels like my way to primarily connect with the universe, is to be an observer of it and to appreciate it. And then if I am able to see something and capture it and share it, then that's a whole other aspect, because it's no longer like some like personal connection between me and the universe. Like, I then get to share it with others and try to inspire the same feelings. And if my image of a planet makes someone go out and look at the night sky, then that's super important to me. It may not have, I don't think, any publications yet, but I do know that I've inspired some people to be more interested in sciences, and particularly astronomy. And as you were saying, Joe, earlier about you kind of feel like you were robbed of not seeing the Milky Way when you were younger, I agree. Like, it's the night sky is our shared cultural human heritage.
Yeah.
As far back as you can go in anyone's direction, like lineage, there's been like a reverence for the night sky, and it's been really important. And so seeing as how most people don't get to experience that anymore, I feel like it's an important role culturally to try to share it as well and renew interest in it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I had a flash of a dystopian future in my brain.
Starlink satellites crisscrossing the night sky, spelling out words.
Yeah. And astronomers are like the new shamans or something. Of like, we're historians of a age that's, extinct. But hopefully that doesn't come to pass.
I mean, we live for billions or trillions of years. Eventually, potentially, the expansion of the universe will make our, cosmic horizon. Yeah. Everything will be beyond it, and we'll be like, oh, hey, it's just us here.
Yeah.
We'll have no idea what left us behind.
Yeah, but, when you talk about billions of years, who knows?
Yeah, a single year feels like a long time.
Yeah.
But cool, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm walking away with deeper appreciation of the sky. So thank you for sharing your experience. I guess. So I'm wondering if you want to talk about like how that love translated into making steps towards learning physics and trying to engage with astronomy in a more like I don't know, terrestrial way.
Yeah, so it's not all just looking at something and describing it with words. Eventually you have to put numbers to things, and sort of stops getting as fun. Once it's no longer pretty pictures and it's calculus. But so I honestly kind of struggled in high school math and physics. Like I was in the like AP courses, but I was like a B/C student, and some of my teachers did not see it in me. But once I got to college and was able to take like my first astro course and like realize that I was around people who were doing like the real work, I really started working harder, because I've always liked math, but I never really knew what to do with it. And then I realized that like physics is just applying the math to what you see.
Yeah.
It's that it's taking the pretty picture and turning it into the numbers.
Yeah.
To answer why it's doing that. So yeah, astronomy turns out is you have the optics of the telescope that you're looking at. You have, since we're no longer using like photographic plates, we're using CCDs. You have quantum mechanics, because these are charge coupled devices where you're having like the photoelectric effect happen. So you have to understand the physics of not only what you're looking at, but your instruments.
Yeah.
But that started to give me a much deeper appreciation as well, because it was more to explore. But at the same time, I feel like I'm saying this without a solution. I'm just stating the problem. I feel like modern schooling has gotten beyond the love of what you're doing, particularly once you get to grad school. It started to feel more like, I don't know. Obviously, homework is work, but there's inherent judgments going on. Like a single homework does not mean that you'll be a bad researcher someday. But there are some professors I've encountered who will tell you that that homework means that your work ethic is really bad. You clearly don't understand the material, and you probably never will. It's like, but you're a scientist. How did you extrapolate all of this? And like, I just had a bad time on this one. It's weird how at the same time as my appreciation grew, I started to also get more jaded, and the love started to get sapped out of it. Undergrad was difficult for reasons outside of that, just some personal life things that happened, but yeah, I think I'm kind of rambling here.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm listening, and I'd be happy to hear about if you wanted to share about why undergrad was difficult, or if you wanted to just talk more about anyways. I'm noticing a temptation to go chronologically, but I'm totally to resist that.
I was just gonna say, I was guessing. I wanted to know a little bit, I guess, about like when, because it seems like you're talking about when you were talking about high school and you know, like with you're getting your first telescope, and you had like so much like passion and just like this drive for it, right? Like, and you had, it sounded like a profound connection that you found that was like so meaningful to you, and something that I don't know if maybe a driving force, you can tell me if this is true, it's like partly for yourself because you felt like that strong connection with you wanted to continue exploring, but also maybe to like share that with the rest of as many people as you could reach and let them know, you know, help them see the connection or help them feel that same like profound connection that you found. Would you say that's kind of like how you were feeling when you first discovered it at high school?
Yeah. Yeah, because I was getting to do actual astronomy. I mean, it wasn't like... I was getting to use a telescope, is what I mean to say. And I was getting to explore and learn things. Maybe it wasn't like, what is the spectrum of this galaxy or whatnot, but I was learning where things were in the night sky. I was learning basic facts about like the distance to this object and whatnot. But then, like high school, there's no astronomy class, so I was learning for the sake of learning on my own. But then I got to college, and it's like you don't have time to do that, because if you want to take the interesting astro courses and not just like, this is the solar system, these are the planets, you have to go through all of those physics courses. And so part of what started to make me jaded is that like you would take like 2 years of physics courses, E&M and mechanics and quantum and all of that. And it's like, I understand that these are required, but at the same time, what I came here for was to use telescopes. And I don't know. It just felt like they would once a semester I was allowed to take like one astro course because I could fit it in, because I had to take all the core stuff. And in undergrad, also had to take like writing comp and like the humanities and stuff required for an art and science degree. So the astro courses like were the best things and my favorite things, but they weren't very common or often. And so a lot of it felt like I was doing so much work to like enjoy one of my 5 classes. Like it always felt like it was astronomy was just a bit beyond my reach, which is a theme that kind of echoes into grad school of like, I feel like I've worked so hard and so long that what I'm working towards should be right there, and it just keeps getting out of my grasp a little bit. But at the same time, I think back to those feelings that I felt in my astronomy courses, particularly the ones where there's one course in particular called Observational Astronomy, where we came up with a research project and we carried it out. And so like we used a telescope at Kit Peak, the MDM, I think it's 1.4 meter. So that was my first experience with a research grade telescope. And so like my idea, like, cause we had to like justify why we thought this was a good project, and we had to like, what's the term? Like, since everyone in the class is doing their own projects, we had to sort of like rank the feasibility of them, and like then for like time slots, like when is this person's object going to be up? Okay, that will be up near the zenith, and then like an hour later, another person's object will be like right there. So let's do person A and then person B after that. So like it was the whole, I learned a little bit of the bureaucracy of actual like astronomy. But my project was looking at a variable star, an RR Lyra, to measure the distance to it roughly, because with astronomy you're just looking at something, you can't actually take like a tape measure to it, and so it's really knowing the distance is really important, especially for the cosmic ladder, is that the term?
Yep.
Yeah. Where it's like linking the different distance measurements.
Yeah.
Because you can't do cosmology if you don't know what the distance of something is, like within our solar system. If we don't have that accuracy, how could we then know something that's something that seems much further? So like the actual experience of like, okay, we have our observing list, and we're out at the telescope and like getting to control it, watching the data come in was just like one of the most life-affirming experiences. And then that was just one class in the semester, and then the next semester you don't get to take an astro course, and you're in a circuits lab, and you're just like, oh man, I know why I'm doing this, but I'm not getting to do it again.
You're like daydreaming about going back to the course from last semester.
Yep. Yeah. And then
yeah, that structure just doesn't seem right. Like if that, that is your focus, is astronomy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense why you get one astronomy course like every other semester and you have to take like 4 other physics courses. Like I understand having the basic of physics, okay, that makes sense, but it shouldn't be to the point where like the professor's saying, oh, I don't know if that's what you meant, like the professors were saying that like because you did something in a homework you weren't good enough or something. And I'm like, I don't even know why they're judging you on the core courses. As long as you pass it, it's fine, because your focus is the astronomy.
Yeah, exactly. Like and
it should be like at least 2 of the courses a semester should be like, so you can learn all the advanced techniques in astronomy, which you're going to need, right?
And then, the same thing because that was undergrad. And then grad school was just so much worse, because then it's like, you don't even get to like, you're like forced into the core courses, and then your advisors get mad at you if you like delay some of them to take what you're interested and passionate about, because well, then you're slowing down, and that could potentially cost them money. And no, grad school, like I was already struggling with the like access to my passion in undergrad, and then grad school was like, okay, now all of that stuff that you didn't like about undergrad is now your job. And the little teases that we give you will be much more exciting and addictive. Like the highs are going to be much higher, but then the lows are so much lower as well. But yet I have kept coming back because what other avenue is there to get into astronomy? Like looking for astronomy related jobs, if you don't have a PhD, you are not qualified for like 85% of them. And then those 15%, like you have to have a master's for at least like 13% of them. So you're left with like, if you don't have a graduate degree, there's like 2% of astro jobs for undergrad. And most of those don't really have much room for like advancement without going back to school. And so like I'm kind of trapped in this horrible system to do what I love.
Yeah.
But I haven't really gotten many chances to do what I love.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
Yeah, that's sad. It reminds me of what I was just saying about the night sky, right? It's like, yeah, my experience is a little bit different in that I've always kind of just been interested in astronomy and astrophysics, and I didn't have that connecting experience with the night sky. Well, as connecting with like a telescope and observation and stuff like that. I just knew that that is something that really resonated with me. But going to undergrad, we had a astronomy course in the whole catalog. I took that, and there was no observation whatsoever, right? We learned about stuff like the Drake equation and stuff like that. So it was fun. It was interesting, and I really enjoyed it. But anyways, I guess my point was just going to be that, like, my undergrad degree, my diploma, it's physics and astronomy. But there's only a course offered in astronomy.
Like, astronomy, it's kind of a pun, but it feels so remote.
Yeah.
Like, they just hammer you down with physics, which is important to understand the context of astronomy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's tragic that there was only one thing offered on the course list.
Yeah. So and to put a caveat is, like, I'm aware that there are programs that are more focused towards astronomy, and you can get like a much different experience. Your mileage may vary.
That's true.
But then coming to grad school, being able to focus on astronomy, I feel like a lot of specialties in physics operate this way, and I kind of wonder why. Like you were saying, you have to get through all these core courses, you have to learn basically all of physics, and then in like your research or whatever, or like at the very end of your graduate career is when you get to do the stuff that you came there to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like even for experimentalists in general, because it's like all those courses are so theory based. It's like, it's like for the theorist, and they're making everyone do it. And it's not really that applicable for a lot of people to know all these details about, like, I don't know. And then experimentalists too in general, it's like until the end is when they're finally getting that.
Yeah. But I mean, in your case too, I mean, like in high energy physics or whatever, I can understand it a little bit more there, because the material is so like advanced or whatever. But like in terms of all the stuff that you took, and in terms of like the thing that actually applies to your research, like, I don't know, what's your experience?
Well, the very small thing that actually applies to my research is not something that I even took a course on, right? It's something that you learn when you're doing the research. And I mean, I don't know, in your case with astronomy, I mean, how much do you think that you learn the skills that you have right now for observing? How much did you learn in actual courses, and how much did you learn just by like doing,
I learned a lot of the photometry in my course, so that's like taking the data, like the light, and extracting the like information out, and like the data reduction and whatnot. I learned a lot of that in my course, but then that stuff became applicable to my hobby as well, because it essentially carried over with like the image combination stuff.
Was that in undergrad or grad school?
That was in undergrad.
Okay.
But in grad school, and this is where I'm not sure if the APS bridge program was necessarily the right fit for me to begin with, because it's like a physics-based thing, and so that's going to skew towards just like general physics. The schools that are in this APS bridge program aren't necessarily like geared towards astronomy, which I kind of found out the hard way, because I just figured that it would be more available. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Well, I mean, you were talking about like if you picked up the skills through courses.
Oh yeah, through courses. So grad school with the APS Bridge program, I never really got to use observational astronomy stuff. Like I taught basic observing things in a lab while I was getting my master's. Like just the skills I already knew about, like positions on the sky, RA and deck, like the constellations and whatnot. But it wasn't like the most important stuff that I've learned related to observational astronomy was not at a school, but at that summer school that I took myself. I didn't. My grad school program did not even mention that this thing existed. I just found it on my own. I did a radio astronomy summer school at Arecibo through the National Radio Astronomy NRAO.
Yeah, I forget what the acronym
And
is.
where was that?
In Puerto Rico at Arecibo. So it alternates between there and Green Bank. So there's a misconception that because the giant dish in Arecibo is down and will not be resurrected because it collapsed from, I believe, Hurricane Maria and just general wear after like 60, 70 years of service. But because that dish is gone, a lot of people think that there's no more radio astronomy at Arecibo, but they still have a 20-meter dish up there. And it's still used for a variety of things. Like a lot of times while we were there, I mean, with radio astronomy, it doesn't matter if it's bright out, like in the optical, because it's radio waves that you're looking at and they pass through clouds. So you can observe at any time. So while we were there, the 20-meter dish was like scanning the sun, doing some solar physics, and then it would like point elsewhere to observe like a pulsar. I was in the pulsar group. And so what's really funny is I got my master's in Neutron Star astrophysics because that was as close as I could get to actual astronomy things that I was interested in, was to work with a theorist and try to combine what she knows about QFT and like finite temperature and density mediums and all of that fun stuff. And me, who was like interested in like how do you take observational properties and use that to constrain things. But what's funny is I didn't get to do any actual observations of like pulsars or neutron stars for my master's. It was this summer course that I took that was like, okay, these are what the pulses look like, and then you average them to get like the average pulse profile and like all of the different intricacies of how do you do a radio astronomy observation and take the data and reduce it. And I am so much more qualified for positions now because of that course than anything I took in my undergrad or grad school. Granted, you pretty much had to be in college to be accepted to this program, but that was probably the most eye-opening experience of my life. Was like, oh, like I met people who work on radio telescopes. Like they're not necessarily doing research of their own, but they get to work on the radio telescopes. And one of them just had a bachelor's, and another one, several of them just had masters, and they're like up there at Green Bank, like fixing the feed horn on the antenna, and like communicating directly with like astronomers. And it's like, why did the schools never like explain that those were options too? That you want to do grad school, like you want to do astronomy. Oh, well, it's academia. You're going to be here until you get your postdoc, and hopefully you get to land at a university and become a professor. No, there's other routes. And the schools have never really made me aware of that for astronomy, and never gave me the training for that, or even like let me know that trainings like that existed.
Wow. Yeah, I think they definitely fail a lot of students on those grounds. It's like they always give you the one narrative about going through the whole academia track and get professorship. But like you're right, there's so many other opportunities I don't even know. It's like you stumbled upon it and you found this and you took the chance, right, on your own initiative, and you learned all this stuff, which is great. It's like kind of luck though too that you like figure that out. Right?
Yeah.
There should be more guidance.
Yeah, there definitely should be. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just like that dream of like my student will be the one who cracks it or something, but it's almost like driving more people like, no, go down the path that I went down. Like, I put in my time in this program, and then you'll take up my place someday.
I feel like my advisor has a little bit of that, where he like, you know, he wants us to go down that path. He's not so pushy on it, right? But you can see that he hopes for that. And I don't know if it's an element of that. Oh yeah, you know, I trained you, and you understand the work. One day, hopefully, you'll take over. You know. Yeah,
it is a noble ambition, but also it can feel constricting.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so, is that something that you would want to do? Work like that, like kind of. I don't know what you would. Are they like technicians or?
Yeah, but the problem with that is it's pretty remote, and so right now it's trying to like find this middle ground of like, can I find an astronomy job where my girlfriend can find a job working for the state or the like national government, like environmental agencies, because it's like, oh, if I wanted to work as an observatory support staff, well, I'm gonna have to live out somewhere very remote to work there. And if she works for like a state agency, there's a good chance that she needs to be near the capital, which means that you're not near the observatories. So it's a bit of a two-body problem right now. But I'm hopeful. I'm not gonna say what the next step is, but I'm hopeful within a year I will be able to announce it. There is something potentially on the horizon, and spoilers, it's not but so yeah, my life is kind of on hold because go back to school if you want to.
Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about
it. I don't feel safe there anymore. So like I came here to do astronomy, or I came to school to do astronomy, and I got at another school I got a master's in Neutron Star astrophysics, and I wasn't the strongest at like the theory stuff or the QFT, but damn it, I got that master's. So that means I know something. And my first experience here at Florida State, sharing what I had done previously, was just awful. The professor, like, I don't know. It was like every meeting was an interrogation. I carried this stink on me because I was a bridge student. As soon as he like was made aware of that, there was this like, well, I don't know if I can really catch you up to speed. And it's like, I don't need to be caught up that much. Did you even read the thesis that I sent you? And the answer is no, he didn't. Because he had that little like respect for me or my work, that it was like beneath him to even see what I'd done previously.
So he had so little respect because you came through the bridge program, you think?
Yes, because he let me know as soon as he realized I was a bridge student, that he'd had a bridge student before,
Oh.
Yeah.
and they had failed.
They had failed?
Well,
He said they had failed.
he didn't say that, but like it was, they didn't meet his standards. They didn't do it fast enough. They didn't do it well enough. He had to help them too much. He had to do his job of like teaching and advising rather than just like winding a student up and sending them off for 2 years to do it all on their own.
So that's like essentially what he had told you about his past bridge student, was that like he needed too much assistance from him, and
Yep.
that
Yeah. My first meeting with him, he let me know that his previous bridge student was a problem for him.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my first start.
Yeah, so we know that bridge student. He came in our cohort, and from the outside looking at his work, from my perspective, it looked like he was doing good. It looked like he was doing well, and sometimes I would look at him and I would feel self-conscious. I would be like, man, he's like moving things along, and I'm like over here like just not doing shit, and anyways, so it's just to say that just I think this professor is a little bit not grounded in reality, but
yeah, but you can't say much because as soon as I got here, he got an award for being like the coolest, best, nicest, most awesome professor on campus.
Yeah.
Not just like within the department, but like for the whole school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, well, he couldn't have done that to you.
It's just weird.
This guy. It's
Yeah.
like, no, he belittled me constantly. Like, I think I left more meetings in tears than not.
Mm.
And it was like, okay, this is great. This school is so much different than previous things. No, I don't know. I think I'm jaded on the bridge program as much as I'm jaded on academia as a whole. Like, I don't think our noble ambitions mean that much when we're just numbers. At the end of the day, to the higher ups, like, we have these goals of, we want to increase like the graduation rates for underrepresented groups in physics, but the higher ups don't necessarily care about the graduation numbers. They just care that you're there currently. Mm-hmm. No one from the program has reached out to me since I left. Because I mean, there's things going on in Florida with diversity and equity and inclusion that are beyond the bridge program, but I feel like we're largely numbers. As long as we're there, it doesn't really matter, because there'll be another crop. If we don't make it to the end, well, there'll be more people coming up soon. Like, the bridge program is exploding, like record numbers of applicants. But then we saw with our program where they could only let in one because they changed it, where it was like, oh, you want to do this? We don't offer that. Mm-hmm. We don't think you should come here.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was, come on in.
Yeah.
I was one of the ones who, I told them that this is what I wanted to do. And they said that might not be available. And I said, okay, well, this is what I'm also good at. Mm-hmm. And they said that might be available. And so I tried that. I tried the first thing, Neutron Star astrophysics. And then I waited my time to get an astro group. And I got one. So I thought. I was supposed to do the supernova observational stuff. And it's the only observational stuff that our school really does. Everything else is theory-based or computational, which is essentially just an extension of theory. And for me, it's always been about the telescope and the interaction of me, the instrument, and the subject. And not like me and my computer that's connected to a cloud crunching this n-body ball, like that to me is not as interesting as looking at the real thing. And so I was so excited because this group seemed like a good fit, and they took me up to our telescope and let me know about how to run it, the quirks of the dome, because I was going to be opening it. They wanted me in the group. They wanted me to know how to run things. And it seemed like a perfect fit, and I really thought that it was fine. All of those physics courses and all the ones I still had left to take were all going to be worth it, because finally, this is what I've wanted to do. It's observational astronomy. It's time domain, because it's supernova that we want to, as soon as they happen, we want to start getting measurements for the light curve. Like, it was raw data, and no one in the group could make a pretty picture from the raw data, but I could, because that's one of my hobbies, was astrophotography and making the pretty picture. And so it just seemed like a perfect fit, particularly because they had a student who was going to leave in the fall, and this was the spring. So all I had to do was join before the summer, and everything would be golden. And so we confirmed with the professor, we confirmed with the department, we got the email back that was like, yep, you're good to go. And I remember I told like so many family members, so many friends, like I celebrated that night. And then the next morning I got an email from the professor, and he was like, oops, I messed up my funding. I can't fund you for the summer. You're going to have to find another group. No mention of like, well, if you can make it through the summer, you can join in the fall. No attempt to try to keep me in the group. It is very late in spring now, and so there's really nothing else in astro. Like, even if I was like, okay, fine, I'll do something different than my skill sets and my interests, like, who knows, like, okay, I'll study molecular gas clouds. Like, that wasn't even an option at that point. And it's like, okay, well, I have to survive for the summer. And my only option was to find another physics group.
But wait, what exactly happened? How did everything was fine and it aligned, and you seemed like you were going to be a vital member of the group, right? You had a skill that they didn't have. Yeah. What happened? How did they go from excitement, we're so excited to have you, the next day, we can't fund you, even though why couldn't they give you a TA ship? I mean, there's tons of ways.
It was never really explained to me either, which is another issue that I have, because when I tell people this, they're like, well, you could have just been like a TA for the summer and like funded yourself. It was never presented to me. So you'd think that if the first thing that every student thinks of, the professor would also think of. So
it doesn't make sense. They would have just offered you the TA ship. That's it. Yeah. They wouldn't have said, I don't have funding for RA. I don't have funding for RA, but you can still work in the group and I'll give you TA.
It was something like the group was full, or if I joined, it would then put that group past like the number of grad students that could be in it. Again, it was never properly explained to me, which makes me feel like they didn't want me, because we see that there could be other options, but if they didn't even try. And so with this like next day decision, like reversal, like I contacted like the bridge program people, and they tried to like push it with the department, because it doesn't make sense, particularly if one of the students graduated at the end of the summer, which they did. That should have just like opened up for me. Yeah. But the professor was just not willing to budge or like push the department for me, which means that I clearly didn't really matter that much. Like if it's just like shoot, well, you're gonna have to find someone else. Like I wasn't the perfect fit. I mean, like, I don't know. It
just sounds like fishy. It just sounds like there's something
yeah.
behind the scenes that happened there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I have no idea if I was like somehow like blacklisted by the original professor, because like when I left, like I was just like, yeah, I don't want to be in your group anymore. Like I don't know. I wonder how much I was polite and professional, but I wonder how much it was just like, this person he's bad. Because I know that original professor has sway in the department. I have no idea. So yeah, I was just completely left grasping for anything. So I ended up in condensed matter, which when I explained to people the swap from observational astronomy to condensed matter, I say, it's like my entire life I've been going to school for painting. And then at the last second, you tell me you have to do sculpture now. It's like, okay, I'm still like doing an art, and I'm like trying to recreate something either that's like realistic or my imagination, but completely different set of tools, completely different end product. Like the similarities are just vague, kind of. So yeah, it's not necessarily a shocker to me that it didn't work out, because it's not what I came to do. I did it to survive. And it turns out that I want to preface by saying at the safety was the highest priority. I never felt unsafe, but I did feel uncomfortable. And I think that's an important distinction, because a lot of the scary experiences that I had at the I was never in danger. I was never in real conceivable danger, because protocols and redundancies, but I felt scared and I felt uncomfortable.
So this was after you left, you didn't go into the astronomy group, and then you went into a condensed matter group, which was at the facility?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that group specialized in nuclear magnetic resonance.
Okay.
So like if you think about like you have some magnetic material, you put it in a really strong magnetic field, eventually they're all going to like align. You hit them with like it's dependent on what the atom is, what frequency of the pulse, but it's usually radio, some are microwave, but you hit it with a pulse and they unalign with the field, and then they slowly wobble and precess their way back to alignment. And while they're wobbling and precessing, they're giving off electromagnetic radiation, and that specific frequency that they give off tells you what is in there, so to speak. So it's like a non-invasive way of learning the composition of an object, but you have to be able to have the object completely enclosed inside your apparatus. So like it's not like you can do remote NMR of a star. Like you could do NMR of a chunk of metal that you have, but nothing, you have to be able to put it in your machine. So, but there were other similarities to astronomy in that, like, at the end of the day, you are reading back electromagnetic radiation, and you're encoding that data like electronically and reading it out on the computer. There are a lot of parallels. It's like the painting and the sculpture, but it's wasn't really the same, and any skills that I gained there aren't necessarily directly applicable to what I actually want to do with my career. And so it always felt like I'm only here because the school forced me to be here. It was either join this group or leave.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen the light yet. I was like, well, it's either this or my scientific career is over. And so that was partially why going to Arecibo and seeing that, like, oh, I have a bachelor's and a master's and a passion for this. There are jobs out there for me. That really helped me see that, like, okay, school is not the only way. The school is not the only thing for me.
How long were you in there for?
I was at the from May until October. So that's like 5 months, 4 or 5 months.
When did you do the summer school?
What's funny is I did the summer school a week after I did the summer school, where it's like they hold like a summer school because it's a support science facility, so they had people from all over come in to like learn about what they can offer there, so that they'll be tempted to come back. So like students and professors from MIT who do condensed matter to learn what capabilities are there, so that they will want to come back and test their materials there. I did magnet summer school at the beginning of May, and then after that, like, it was a whole week, and then the next week I flew to Puerto Rico, did the radio astronomy summer school, and realized like, and came back and was like, I'm still gonna give this a try. Like, the nicest people that I met at this school were like the nicest professors that I met at this school were at the lab. They were incredibly welcoming, incredibly nice, and it didn't feel like academia over there. And it's like, man, if only condensed matter was my passion, like, that would have been it. That would have been the place. Because they were really cool. It is a top class facility. Like, they hold world records and all types of things. And it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Unfortunately, it's not the opportunity that I was looking for. Which is hard, because I am very grateful to have had that opportunity. And I know that there are tons of people out there who would have killed for what I had access to. But me leaving means that they have access to it now. There is a spot open, so I'm not holding it from them.
Did you hear that, listeners? It's open.
Yeah. If you're interested in nuclear magnetic resonance, there's a spot. Although it may have been filled. Like, they were so nice that I actually quit at like the end of September, but they kept me on the payroll for October, so that I could continue to see the counselor through the school, because this is where it gets really lovely. If you leave for a mental health break, they cut your health insurance. They cut your student health insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The school, they're like, we support you. We understand why you're doing this. We value you as a member of our community. And so we're going to allow you to go get this help that we're not going to help you get.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a struggling grad student? And health insurance in this country is through the fucking roof? Well, figure it out.
Yeah. I went through the same thing when I took my break, and I deferred. But since I was unemployed for that time, I went through the marketplace, and then they offer a pretty big, I think it was free, but it ended up being free because they I guess that's basically
Because
Obamacare.
you were unemployed. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
basically
kind of like Obamacare.
it's basically Obamacare.
But I mean, like these are all things that okay, if they're gonna take your health insurance away, they should give you that information and hook you up with the.
And it wasn't
marketplace.
easy. It took me a long time to.
No,
It's not
yeah,
easy.
they don't give you any assistance. I bet that was all on you.
Yeah.
To figure out. Thankfully, my counselor that I was seeing was really good at the school, and so like they helped me find a counselor outside the school and made sure that I was set up before they made me leave that. But again, it was like just I had that extra month to figure it out, and that was just because people were very nice. That was not the actual physics department or the bridge program. So I'm going to tell you guys a story about why I decided to quit, or in the school in general. So the largest continuous field DC magnet on the planet is at the lab, and it can reach 45, no, oh man, I don't remember exactly which number it is. It's either 42.5 or 45.2 Tesla, which pretty strong. Your typical NMR machine at a hospital gets to maybe 3 Tesla if it's a beefy one, but it's usually like 1 or 2 Tesla. A fridge magnet is like 0.05 or maybe even an additional 0, like 0.005 Tesla. Like they're very weak. The magnetic fields that we're used to with like magnets in our hands doesn't compare. So you're working with crazy forces. And so like for the reason that you have this magnet is because you want to get the strongest signal out. When you're looking at these exotic materials, like they're interested in materials that have weird quantum properties at really low temperatures and high magnetic fields. Like things change under those conditions and sometimes behave in abnormal or seemingly counterintuitive ways. And so there's a lot of interest in applications for things like quantum computing when you have weird compounds like yttrium, barium, uranium oxides, or you got some weird things going on with the lanthanides and the heavier stuff. So the strongest signals for the heavier elements require higher magnetic fields. Like the ones that are most reactive are hydrogen and fluorine, which I believe are also like some of the most electronegative. But the hydrogen thing is good for us humans because we're made of water, so we don't have to be put into a 45 Tesla field to see where the water and the hydrogen in our body is. You can put us in like a very low 1 to 2 Tesla field and boom, you can see all the water in your body without cutting it open. But yeah, so that's why you need stronger magnets, is for the less reactive stuff. So to generate a magnetic field that strong, you use a lot of power. And I want to say that these numbers may not be accurate. That the lab in total uses something like 5% of the city of total electric grid, which is a lot. Like that's crazy for a single building to be drawing that much of an entire city's electrical grid. And this large magnet, I want to say, is when it's running, can be responsible for a large majority of that draw. Don't quote me on this. So I'm not going to put actual numbers on how much the 45 Tesla draws, but it's substantial. It's like a decent fraction of the lab's city allocation. And so there's a resistive magnet core, which, so if you have moving electric current, you generate a magnetic field. That's one of those fun physics things I had to learn before I could do astronomy. And it turns out it's relevant. Because you do have moving charges in space. So got the resistive magnet, running a lot of current through that, but that's going to generate a lot of heat. And so you have to cool that. But there's also a superconducting outer magnet. So the inner one has high pressure water running through it to carry away the heat. Like it's the heat exchange medium. And so they have, I don't know the PSI, but the pressure of the water, if it were to somehow be directed at you and like a pipe were to break, it would kill you. There's only been one death at and it was during, I believe it was early in the construction, but a worker opened a valve that they shouldn't have and died from the force of the high pressure water.
That's scary enough for me to consider not working there.
Yeah.
One is enough. I'm like, I don't want to be number two.
Yeah. I mean, there's now, as I was saying earlier, safety is their highest priority. And there are now multiple safeguards, and there's no way that I would even go near that spot. And even if I was near there, there's now multiple safeguards there. There's no reason why a grad student would be like checking a pressure valve on a pipe. That's like a maintenance thing. But that's the level of forces that you're dealing with, is that like you have this like hundreds to thousands of PSI water going through the resistive inner magnet, and then on the outer part is a superconducting magnet. And so it's been a while since I was looking through the physics of superconductivity, but from what I remember, essentially the resistance drops to zero once the material gets cold enough. And so you'd better keep that material cold if you're running current through it. And so to keep that cold, they use liquid helium. And so we all know helium is the gas that you put in the balloons, you inhale, and you get the funny voice. But when it's in a liquid form, it has to be under super high pressures, because it's also very cold. And so it's like single Kelvin, like, or below. Like at the Mag Lab, there was a group called millikelvin, people whose experiments were taking place in the temperature range of millikelvin, like really close to absolute zero. So you have the other danger ingredient in the helium that's in there. And not only is it like dangerous, because you learn that the expansion factor from liquid to gas state of helium is 700 times. So if there is a leak, like a substantial leak of helium, the volume of the liquid will expand 700 times that and displace all of the oxygen in the room very quickly, and you will suffocate. Not suffocate, asphyxiate in like 7 seconds. So that's another danger. And even when I wasn't working on the super large magnet, because this was only like a one-time thing, my main job was carting around liquid helium and filling our magnet in the lab, because we had a superconducting magnet, 16 Tesla, and we had to constantly keep it cold, because almost always it was running in remote, where we had a sample from some people across the country running and taking data. So you have to keep it cold, because it's not just your work, it's other people's work. So you have this additional pressure, because like you don't want to fail other people. It's one thing to fail yourself, that sucks, but you can only be mad at you. Like, I don't want other people mad at me for something that I messed up. So I was constantly working with the liquid helium, which, again, like, it wasn't dangerous because of all the safety procedures, but I was uncomfortable. I don't think you're ever going to really feel comfortable next to something that can kill you that quickly if you make one mistake. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes into, like, if my mental, like, if I'm not in the right headspace and I'm distracted by some things going on in my life and I mess up, it could kill me or hurt me or hurt others, or at the very least cost our group a lot of money, because liquid helium is one of the most expensive liquids. Particularly last summer, there was a helium shortage. So we were spending like $5,000 a week on helium, which adds up. That was just our group. And it provided that we were good there. I think there was like a 98% efficiency for overall, like, in our group. We were one of the most efficient groups at maintaining our helium. But a lot of pressure to not waste any of it. So let's return to the 45 Tesla. You got the high pressure water in the center core of the magnet, and then you've got the resistive things with the liquid helium out there. So you've got two really deadly forces underneath you. The helium, you could asphyxiate if there's a leak or something, and the water, if it were somehow, or to, like, a pipe were to burst, could kill you. The magnetic field is strong enough to twist and rip steel in there. It's a crazy amount of force that was going on right underneath my feet. And so I'm lowering a probe. I want to say it's like 20 feet tall, maybe a little shorter, maybe like 15 feet. But it's tall. Like, to carry it, like, we had two people, like, one person grabbed the end, one person grabbed, like, the top, and we'd carry it perpendicular down the hallway because it couldn't fit in the normal hallways, just the magnet cells when it was vertical. Because, like, the field center is where it's strongest and where it's actually relevant is like an inch. But it has to be so isolated from stray radio sources or, like, thermal noise, that, like, you need the probe that's that long to get it down in there, where it's isolated. So we get the probe in, and you don't want to drop it too fast because it's coming in at room temperature, and that would boil off the helium that's in the outer part. And if you drop it in too fast, like, you could boil all of the helium and it could, like, burst because you are now boiling a huge amount of liquid that turned into gas. So it's a huge pressure. So that could damage the magnet, cost a lot of money in lost helium, damage the probe, which is, like, the most important thing that our group has, because NMR is the only way that you can really measure the distribution of the magnetic field in this magnet. So I'm lowering this in very slowly, and it's going down into a vacuum, so you have an atmosphere of pressure difference that's pushing it down, plus you have gravity that's pulling it down. So it really wants to just, like, go pull itself all the way down and then launch itself out when the helium boils. So I'm fighting it. It's pretty heavy too. And we start to ramp the field up because it takes a little bit. And so once you go above, like, maybe like 15, 20 Tesla, you have to have the water running. Otherwise, there'll be too much heat and the resistive part will get too warm, mess up the superconducting part, and everything will just rip itself apart. because that's what it had done earlier in the summer. So my group was sent in to map the fixed updated version, because once they took it apart and put it together again, they no longer know the exact field distribution. And they don't want to waste time of scientists by like trying to find where the field center is. Like they want to know exactly down to the millimeter, how much do we lower the probe, so that all the time spent running the magnet is time spent gathering data. So we start ramping. We're heading up to 45 Tesla. We're going the full field. So I'm standing over the magnet with the probe. The water comes on, and so it's like a deafening roar. Like you can feel it. It's like there's like a contained waterfall around you. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. You know, it's all fine. Like safety is number one concern. I just got to focus on not dropping the probe. And I hear one of the loudest booms I've ever heard, and all the lights go out. And I swear, in that instantaneous slice of time, I thought I was gonna die. I like, if you could hook my brain up to a TV or monitor, I could show you what I saw when I thought that was the last thing I was ever going to see. And the light, turns out that it was just the magnet next door. It lost its superconductivity and drew too much power and blew and tripped the circuit, whatever. And so the power just went out for a second, came back on. My advisor was like, oh, haha, I think that was next door. And I'm just like standing up there like traumatized, because I thought I was about to be a mist. I thought that the last thing I was ever going to see was this stupid little corrugated steel corner, and then over to the left was the control desk and with the monitors, and like I just like pretended to laugh it off. And I went home that evening and just cried, because my life was so beyond me now. I was so out of control of my own life that I was letting this school put me in this situation that I had no intention of ever being in initially. That like, yeah, I wasn't in danger, so to speak, but I still had a perceived near-death experience. And that's just like par for the course for that. That is not what I signed up for in the slightest.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't believe that I'd reached that point where I was such a number to them. They were like, we'll just, put you on this bomb even though you have no training for it. And that's when I realized that like I was done with this school. I was done with being something that could be moved around. I've decided that if I return to school, if or when, it's only going to be at a program that wants me for a specific thing that I want to do.
Yeah.
That might not exist for a while. I might not have the qualifications. I might have to go into industry. But I know at some point I will try to go back, and those are the conditions that I've set for myself, because it's not worth my life to do something that I don't even want to do. And I'm just fed up with that feeling of being a pawn for disinterested, crusty white men in the higher ups of the physics departments. Yeah, so that's that's where I'm at.
I hate to interrupt, but it sounds like there's still a good bit more here to talk about, and it looks like the battery needs changing. So is it okay if we take a quick break, bio break, and then pick up there? All right, we'll see y'all in a second. Okay. So we're back. You were just sharing with us a harrowing near-death experience or
Perceived near death. Yeah.
perceived near-death experience. So from there, like, what do you do with that, right? I mean, you described how that kind of gave you perhaps motivation to leave, I guess.
Yeah. So this is where, now we're at the present, so to speak. So I've just been, for this past year, I've just been attending counseling every week to try to undo all of the lovely damage that grad school and particular professors and events have done to me. And to try to get my self-confidence back to even like put myself in those positions of perceived judgment. Because it wore me down to the point where I couldn't enjoy really anything, because it felt like, oh, if I'm not using my free time to further my research or work on homework, then I'm wasting my time, my professor's time, and I'm not cut out for this. And that's not true at all. Self-care is incredibly important. Knowing your limits of when to stop working and when to take care of yourself is important, but I could not find that balance here. And I don't think I can, and I don't think I could come back and ever feel comfortable here again, given what's happened to me. Even if like the supernova group was like, okay, we got it all figured out. Like, we tripled pinky promise. Somehow we've got 3 pinkies to promise. That it won't happen. Well, we'll pay you like $1 million. Well, maybe at that point I would take
Like,
the chance.
I'll pay you $1 million. You're like,
Yeah, if you guys screw me over, you'll pay me? Okay. No. I just don't, yeah. Even if they like rolled out the red carpet, metaphorically, I would never feel safe or secure here again. I am incredibly fortunate to have such supportive friends and family, because without them, I'd be completely screwed. This was not a decision that I could make or take without being incredibly fortunate to have such a support network. And it's really shitty, and I feel guilty about it, because I know that there are many people in my situation and in my shoes who can't do what I did, who aren't able to step away because they don't have the support to step away, and so they're stuck in this vicious cycle of a school that's just taking advantage of them and their passion for the school's gain. Because, hey, you're a free worker, you'll teach some classes, TA some labs, grade some papers, and we can pay and treat you like shit, because at the end of the day, we got what we needed out of you. That's the cost of doing business with us. Yeah.
I mean, would you say that you had good self-confidence before starting grad school in general?
Yeah, I had pretty good self-confidence. Honestly, my self-confidence was kind of low after leaving undergrad, but it was pretty high after leaving my master's program. Even though my master's program is no longer affiliated as a bridge site and existed kind of solely to farm grad students into a program that no one would look at otherwise, it still got me a degree. I still learned a lot. Several of the professors did actually care about us. Several did not. But I still got more out of it. Like I still left that program in debt, but with a surplus of confidence. Like I wrote a 90-page master's thesis in the middle of a pandemic and then defended it without, like, all my meetings with my advisors were remote because we were on lockdown. And I still got one out. I still got interesting results. And I was excited because I'd produced something. I had never been published before. I still don't think I am, even though there's some research that I've been involved in, but as like an undergrad, that like eventually when it gets published by the PhD student working on it, I'll be like a name super far down the list. Like I helped with data reduction on these clusters, these galaxy clusters. But yeah, I was super excited, and I even cited the professor I tried to work with here first in it. And so like when I met with him, I was like, I've cited your work. Like, you're the man. Like, I'm so excited to work with you. Like, I can't believe I have this opportunity. I left with very high confidence, and within...
So it was the first professor that you're talking about that you
Yeah.
worked with that you had cited in your
Yeah.
your thesis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah. Another way that the program let me down is they didn't tell me how much I started in the spring, because I finished defending my master's thesis at the end of August. And so it was like, okay, the next semester, like fall semester, starts in like a week. And I was like, I can't do this move. My girlfriend, who is going to move with me, like still has one semester left. She graduates at the end of December. So like the school was like, oh yeah, you can start in the spring. And that was good. But at the same time, it carried a lot of things that I didn't realize with it. Like as soon as I got here, they were like, you got to find a research group because it's almost summer. So like, I don't know the typical like time frame of when you first start talking to groups, but I feel like you're there longer than a month.
Yeah.
So it was very rushed. Bridge program people were like, you gotta find a group, gotta find a group, gotta find a group. I don't think I had to, but they told me that's what I had to do. So had the fun, confidence shattering experience immediately. And what really sucks is that like one of the first classes that I took here, because when I started it was all remote. I took a cosmology course and I loved it. I had to do a lot of math. I had to learn a lot, but I was like, I had to learn a lot of new math that I'd never done before. Like I'd never done GR stuff or like really anything with tensors before. But then it was like, all right, we're working with like the Friedman equation and like all of this GR cosmology stuff. And I had a hard time at first, but I ended up getting an A in the course. And I was like, all right, I really do think I can do this stuff. And at the same time, like just getting destroyed in my research group. And it kind of goes back to that, like, there's always that like carrot on a stick of like astronomy and the stuff that I'm interested in, while I'm just getting whipped by the driver and everything else. And so like part of what kept me here after that initial research experience was like, well, I know that there's like courses and professors and stuff that I am interested in that I can do well at if given the chance, the opportunity, and like some patience. But just never really solidified the carrot just kept getting smaller and further away.
Yeah, there's a few things I find myself curious about. One thing is, I wonder if you wanted to say anything more about your experience with counseling. I guess you mentioned that you had a good counselor. How do you feel like your work towards regaining your self-confidence is going? Is there any tools that you've found helpful that you might want to share?
Counseling is great and it sucks, and I never look forward to it. But I always leave it glad that I did it. It's very easy and quick to get hurt. But healing takes a long time and is a much more drawn out pain. But that's a part of the healing process. Takes a second to get a cut, but weeks to heal. So yeah, counseling sucks and is painful, but the pain lessens a bit each time. It's learning to live with it and give it context and meaning. If I had not left the school and gone through what I've been going through, then I wouldn't have a lot of these insights, or at least I could say them but not believe them. Now I looking on the outside and looking in, has given me some perspective, particularly that, like, one metaphor or analogy that my counselor and I have been talking about is that we're all kind of like, you guys know about those Japanese pots that they're broken.
Yeah, and then they fix with gold.
They fix them with gold. Yeah. We're all kind of like different shaped pots. We all had different initial conditions, and we all get broken in different ways, but it's how we put ourselves together again. We're never going to be that unbroken pot again, but we can be something new and something in a lot of ways more beautiful in its imperfections. That gold that we use to glue ourselves back together is kind of what makes us special. And so, yeah, my pot got tossed around by other people while I watched helplessly. But now it's my job to put it back together, and I'm enjoying that in as much as I can. It's also difficult to, like, waking up and having really nothing to do during the day feels good at first, but for someone whose whole life has been filled with this purpose of, like, I've got to go be the best astronomer I can be, and I've got to be spending each moment of my life, like, working towards that goal, and if I'm not, then I'm wasting time. It's been really hard to shut that off and allow myself time to heal. I've been feeling like purposeless because I can't do what I feel like I was put here on Earth to do in this town. I can't do that. Like, there's no avenue for me to do observational astronomy here. But my girlfriend's job is too good and setting us up for too much future success to have her leave right now for me to go to a school that may or may not do this to me again. So I've just been, I don't know, people say like positive affirmations. Like I think the way that we talk to ourselves internally really, we don't think of it as like affecting us because we think that is us, but the words we use in our head directly influence our moods. And so it sounds like that trite bullshit of like, just keep positive thoughts in your head and you'll feel better. And it's like, well, you have to make an effort to keep the positive thoughts in, but there is something to it. There is trying to reframe a failure as a learning experience rather than a failure, or just telling yourself, rather than I failed, you say I tried. I didn't fail at this latest school. I tried. They failed me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They failed me, and it's their loss. And I may not always feel that, but sometimes I do, and I think that's a victory.
Yeah,
I definitely think it's their loss.
Yeah. Yeah, I found myself going down a very similar journey recently of like, before I took the break of, I guess it was right around COVID, right? I think I took the break like during when things were remote, or maybe just after, I forget. Not to compare it to your experience at all. But I had a similar wake up moment of like, they were making us take the qualification exam in person. And I was like, when it was so unknown, like what happens after COVID.
Yeah.
And
no one knew. There was no vaccines, really.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't want to go in this room with like all these people for like 4 to 8 hours straight and like expose myself to this. Like, I'm not willing to die for this test.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? And then I was just like, okay, what if I leave? And then I realized, like, I don't know who I am once I leave,
Yeah. That's been something that I've been struggling with too, because you tie your identity to what you do and what you want to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's like for me, I identified as my work, right? Like I got caught up in this story of like, I'm a hard worker. I'm someone who's resilient, who will push through anything, and I'm going to achieve what I set out to achieve, because that's what I'm capable of. But then when I was like, what if I leave? Then all that's gone, and I'm like, who am I?
Yeah.
And so I had to cultivate like a whole new persona, a whole new narrative of like who I am and who I want to be and stuff like that. And that took a very long time. And there's still echoes of like this narrative of like, I am my work kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's still there. And there's benefit to it, right? It's adaptive, right? It's what makes me a hard worker and what, allows me to achieve a lot of things. But it also it would also put me in compromising situations where I might, allow myself to be abused or to be, taken advantage of or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so it's a loaded question, but I guess I'm wondering if you still feel like you are, like, because I heard some aspects of it, like, without the observational astronomy, do you feel like you don't have a purpose?
So this is kind of interesting because I have had to redefine what my purpose would be without observational astronomy. And so that's kind of been bird photography for me. These are time domain events where if I don't see it and take a picture of it, then it wasn't recorded. So it has given me an avenue to share my observations of the world and the way I appreciate its beauty. It's given me an avenue to continue doing that. It's not space, but it still is in that similar vein of it will spark an interest in people. I'm sharing the natural world, and it still allows me to sort of be an observer. And I think if you had to boil it all down, what I want to do is share what I see. And so this is one way for me to do that. Whereas like, being able to take pictures and connect private moments to a wider audience is important to me. So it kind of scratches the itch, but at the same time, I wish I was every night or every day like posting a different astro image, but it's harder to do with weather. And do I feel like lugging 60 pounds of equipment 30 minutes out of town to then troubleshoot it, and maybe I forgot a cable? But
You can put like a month long camping trip or something.
yeah,
Or isolated, and you just
yeah, it lets me do something parallel, that still feels like very related to my calling, because it's still building me a skill set of like explain what you see, why it's important, like get people interested. And the other thing that I've been doing is skateboarding, which I think has really helped give me a perspective on what it means to fail and what it means to try. Because I would say the vast majority of clips or tricks that I've ever got or ever landed, that's like 1% of the skating that I've done. The other 99% was falling and just slamming into concrete or hitting a pebble on accident and just eating shit and sliding across the gravel or whatnot. And that is kind of what all makes it worth it in the end, is that you know what you went through to get that make, to get that landing. And so, like, to be a skater, you have to be okay with failing. And you have to be okay with knowing that that's a step in growth and in learning.
Yeah.
And because there's no structure to it, there's no punishment if I fail. Whereas, I failed this homework. Well, now the professors have me blacklisted and all this other stuff.
Well, it's like if you had them watching you while you're skating, and every time they're just like always continuously saying, "You suck. You're never gonna be able to skate. You shouldn't be skating."
Yeah. Yep. Whereas, it's just like what's so nice about it is if it's a supportive community that celebrates each other's personal victories. And it's not like it's not comparative either. Like, that's one thing that I love so much is like what I do on my board is what I want to do. Like, to me, there's like skateboarding is like kind of like figure skating. Like, there's like an art to it, like a dance sort of. Like, everyone's approach is going to be different. Everyone's going to have different strengths and weaknesses. And so it's like an opportunity to learn and to teach others, and in a non-judgmental way. And it's been a lot of fun to fall and then get back up and land it later,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes it all the more satisfying. And so I'm hoping that there'll be a lovely parallel in my life with my academic career of like, this was just a bit of gravel in the road. I fell and scraped myself up, but I'm going to dust myself off and I'm going to stick it next time.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I don't, well, then I'll just repeat that and then maybe land it the following time.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that I don't stop and let some of these lovely people beat me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I stop, then their perception of me may have been accurate, even if it's not how I feel about myself.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give them anything.
Yeah, fuck them, dude.
Yeah, fuck them.
I mean, it's already not accurate.
Yeah.
It'll never be accurate just because I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's just like the damage that they've done to me, where it's like, I'm still like, well, maybe they have a point.
No.
Yeah, I think regardless of whatever happens, whether you go back to school or whether you don't, I think I have hope for your future, and I think that, you know, it's going to be one that could be filled with like beauty and happiness, and like I think it'll start within yourself, right? It'll be like,
Yeah.
wherever you go, you'll bring that with you, you know. And having gone through the failure, having gotten scraped up, I wish I knew what the Japanese art was called.
I think it's called like Kintsugi.
Yeah, maybe
It's something like that. Because there's a body armor in Path of Exile that's named after it.
Okay.
Because its like whole effect is like, if you get hit, then you get bonus stats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
but
similar.
Anyways, to adopt your analogy, you know, I think the trite saying of it, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as it doesn't traumatize you.
Yes. Yeah.
And you process what does. But
Yeah.
anyways, so I'm very hopeful. That,
Thank you. Yeah.
especially now that you've stepped out of the environment, you know, you've given yourself the opportunity and space to, you know, try to feel better.
Yeah.
I think that helps, even though as you were mentioning earlier, even sitting with that can be hard.
Yeah, because I'm trying to frame my position as one of gratitude, and that the fact that I'm able to step away like this is a blessing. And it's being afforded to me by people who love me and care about me, and they're okay with helping me, and that it's okay to accept this help, and that I deserve it. Obviously I'm not just gonna like all right, I'm not doing shit, I'm comfy, like I'm existing, but I'm not like thriving. I don't think you can really thrive while you're trying to heal from something so big. But yeah, I'm just trying to keep the perspective of this is a blessing to be grateful for and not something to feel guilty about.
I mean, you're doing important work. Like, all that healing work it's vital. I think everyone needs to do that.
Yeah, it's particularly hard because I think like the aspect of like toxic masculinity is that like, shit, I look at my friends from undergrad, they're married and have houses and mortgages, and it feels like I don't know. I don't remember what I was getting at.
Well, to finish maybe what you're getting at is everyone seems so put together, right?
Yeah.
Like their life is so, you know, like maybe to the toxic masculinity part is about like being a provider or something like that.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, it's difficult taking this time off and not being able to provide financially because that's what's expected of me, so to speak. Like, it doesn't feel like society makes a space for us to step aside and heal, regardless of gender. But particularly for men, I do feel like there's a stigma of taking that time to step aside, because it's like, no, just don't feel those emotions. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps and just tough it out. And if you can't tough it out, then there's something wrong with you. And it's like, no, there's not something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the system I'm in currently.
I feel like, yeah. I mean, as a woman in physics, I also feel more of that in physics. And I wonder if it's because it's like a predominantly male-dominated field where I feel like there is no space for me to, you know, be emotional, express my emotions, and like kind of even want to I don't have the time and space to put the work into that when I want to sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think part of my journey, at least, is to like be able to balance that and to be able to say, advocate for my own needs and be like, no, like I need this space. I need to have a safe space here. And this is how like I need it to be, like what it needs to look like. And try to even maybe inspire the people like in my group and stuff to kind of even open up like that too. And so we can form like a better kind of connection. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's
hard. Like the systems that are put in place constrain us kind of regardless of our genders.
Yeah.
Like the differences are based on what you present as, but it's very, the systems in place are very confining to everyone, because it's not a binary. Like emotions aren't the binary. Like men don't just feel certain emotions and women just certain other ones. We all feel the full spectrum, but the systems in place tell us that, like, no, you are only supposed to lie in this bandpass, and you are only supposed to lie in this bandpass.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is constricting, but I do feel like us younger people having these conversations, it does give me hope that someday, like, they're not gonna live forever, right? like someday we will be the older people, and hopefully we'll be understanding.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely needs to be space for men like, to specifically for men, even more so. I mean, for everyone, but like to be told that it's okay and actually you should like open up emotionally, you know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
you can
like,
be vulnerable.
Yeah, be vulnerable and like even learning like what those feelings are, what they mean, where they come from, exploring that.
Yeah.
It's just sad that that's the way society is right now. But I think, like you said, like our younger generation is more in tune with that, the importance of that, and maybe it's a positive for the future.
Yeah.
One thing I find gratitude in, with my experiences, what I've found anecdotally, the more I suffer, the more compassion and understanding I can have for other people who have suffered, and the less, judgmental I can find myself becoming, and like accepting of other people's way of living. And it just feels like a much more, I feel like after I come on the other side of some traumatic event, I feel like my world gets a little bit bigger, It's a little bit, I've never put really words to this feeling before, but maybe you understand what I'm saying. Like
your room for empathy grows.
Yeah, something like that.
And like, not necessarily just because of you experienced something, so now you have empathy for that situation, but it then gives you like empathy for people who are experiencing new things in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very powerful skill, empathy, that more people should be practicing and taught. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm mindful of the time, but I guess I wanted to maybe hard pivot about and talk a little bit about my experience, I guess, with my advisor and see.
Yeah, I'd like to hear. I'm very interested.
Yeah. The problem is I'm not sure how much to share on this podcast. It's a little bit sensitive, and I don't know who may or may not be listening. But so yeah, we talked a little bit about it, but to catch you up, basically, I've been last time we saw each other in person, we were about to take the quals, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so right after then is when Sage was bit by a snake. And she was in the hospital for weeks.
Oh, poor girl.
And so I was really stressed out because I was trying to prepare for this test, but I was trying to be present for my dog. And so ultimately I just decided, like, fuck it, I'm going to be there for my dog, and just however the test goes, it goes, So I did pretty good. I guess I passed half of them that time that we met, and then the next test I passed the other half. So I passed the quals.
Nice.
Fortunately.
Hey.
But so then the next hurdle was the prospectus, right? The oral exam. And then there was some conflict basically that arose around that for me and my advisor. Basically, I was trying to complete this document as soon as possible, because now that I decided to stay and I passed the quals, I was like, okay, I need to just get the fuck out of here. I need to
get everything in order to be done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so I was trying really hard to finish this thing, and then there became some like disputes about like logistics of like what to include in the document, what not, and like I had certain opinions about like, well, this is my document, this is what I think is necessary given my knowledge, and he had differing opinions. And at one point, this one conflict arose where he's like, can you make like this specific plot? There's a lot of logistics that we don't need to go through. They're not super relevant. But to make that plot that he was asking for basically meant I had to like redo everything. And I thought that would take at least weeks. And it was coming close to the end of the spring semester. And I'm like, I don't have weeks. I wanted to present. So I'm like... trying to talk to him of like, okay, do we have to do this? Like, can you help me with it? Or like, can we do this plot after the prospectus? And basically he wasn't really willing to compromise whatsoever. He was communicating as though like, you just have to do it, And I was like, I don't get it. Like, why do I have to do this thing? So I pushed it, and my advisor is supposed to be like an expert in NVC, nonviolent communication. Right? And so Irene and I took a class in that based on his...
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, he helped bring the NVC class to our school. And so I'm like, okay, I learned these tools in NVC. Let me try communicating it to him using some of these tools, because he should understand that. I was like, here's what I'm observing, like, you said this, it made me feel this way, like, here's some strategies, can we like work together or compromise or blah blah blah. And basically the next meeting in person, he kind of exploded. He kind of erupted into like a rage. And I'd never seen him act like that before in the years that I'd been working with him. There was something like perhaps a little bit off about our interactions. Like, I'm not sure how to characterize it, but he never gave me any explicit signs that like I was unsafe. So I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, he had requested in the past that I be like vulnerable and open and honest with him. So anyways, he blew up at me, and he was obsessed with like, he's saying like, are you blaming me for this? And he was, in my opinion, inappropriately taking credit for my work. Yeah. Oh, so basically, at some point in the conversation, I had inferred why he wanted me to make this plot. I was like, oh, I think I'm getting it. Like, you think I don't know anything. Like, you think I don't understand what my project is and what I've been doing this far, and you want me to redo this plot because you want me to prove to you that I've understand it by forcing me to have to redo everything. And he's like, yeah, you know, that's basically how I feel is, and then he was like saying something like, can we at least agree that I've done all of the work? And
No. No.
yeah. And I was like, no. And he's like, and at this point he's yelling, he's like shouting, and he's like, I coded this, I coded this, I coded this, and I coded this. Like, and then I'm feeling super unsafe in this meeting because he's like literally yelling at me, and I'm like, well, actually, I think I coded that. And he's like, no, I definitely coded that. And anyways, so basically, yeah, I felt very unsafe in that meeting. He more or less said I was incompetent. I didn't understand anything. Took credit for my work.
Mask off.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so then after that meeting, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And I'm like, suddenly I saw how he viewed me. He thought I was like some piece of shit student who didn't know anything. And he was just doing like charity work.
Yeah, you're the charity case.
Yeah, by uplifting this diversity student.
That's what it feels like in the bridge program. That's what you like.
Yes. Yeah. That is 100% my experience. Was that like, how dare we ask for anything when they deigned to let us in the first place?
Yeah. We're like, they're doing such a service for us. Like, we can't advocate for anything for ourselves. Like,
you are gonna ask for that? A drowning person is asking for a life vest?
Yeah, I mean,
learn to swim.
For me, I was just asking for clarity. I was like, why do I have to do this shit? But so, you know, I'm hooked up with a counselor. I go to therapy once a week, once every other week. It vacillates, but she suggested something to me, which I guess I will say on the podcast, is that she suggested that, like, oh, he sounds like a narcissist. And so I went down this rabbit hole of learning about the disorder and like how it manifests in terms of behavior and stuff like that. And I learned a lot, and I was just like, holy shit, this explains everything. You know, this explains so much. And from what I learned, it wasn't a very hopeful picture. It was like, it's probably not going to get better. It would probably get worse, if anything. And, you know, exploring going to HR or whatever, or going to a different group, like, those seem like unviable options to me.
Yeah, it's not really a lateral move. It kind of like sets you further back.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's the short of the situation that I was in. And I was like, okay, so now I was reevaluating again, should I leave? You know, because now it's like,
yeah,
it's no longer whether I felt competent or capable. it was like, I don't feel safe here. I don't know what's going to happen working with this guy. Like,
Yeah.
if he blows up at me again, like, I'm not going to tolerate that behavior. Like, that's just fucked up.
Yeah.
And then, like, he could potentially sabotage me in the future or something. Like,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to know what he's going to say on Rex?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's been one of my fears. It's like, okay, I want to go back to school. Where do I get those letters?
Yeah.
Where do I get those letters from people recent enough to, like, actually say things meaningful about me? Because undergrad people, it's been like almost a decade.
Yeah.
So they can't speak to me as a current student or anything. And God, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, thinking about your situation, I could easily see how it's mirrored in a lot of ways, because I spent so long with this dude, and it's just like, so anyways, I'm just in this situation where it's like sunk cost fallacy a little bit of like, now I passed the quals, I'm so close, like, should I give that up? But I'll just let you know, at the moment, I've kind of, like, I'm not looking for advice around that, I guess. It's, I've kind of more or less decided to try to stay. I'm just like feeling it out. I'm finally gotten back to working on the prospectus and like trying to present and whatever, and just seeing how it goes. But I still currently have like a foot out the door, I've been more seriously looking at jobs, trying to set up like a tutoring side gig, whatever.
Yeah.
And I hold my place in grad school very lightly, where it's just like, okay, now, like, you kind of suggested a similar thing, right? Like, if they cross my boundary, like if he blows up at me again, I'm just like, okay, peace out, I'm done. I'm not going to tolerate this.
Is there some relief that you feel in setting that boundary and like saying to yourself, like, okay, like I have my limits now, like they can't fully take advantage of me because I have set a limit?
Yes and no. Mostly yes, I guess. I guess it's more about like telling myself that I shouldn't tolerate that. Being able to trust myself that if that happens, that I should just walk away. And being able to like actually believe that and commit to that, does bring some relief, I guess. But then there's, the sneaking thing of like, can I really let it go? If it does happen, it's hard.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's a little bit of the context, I guess. And so given that's why I thought of your experience with your first advisor. And it sounds like kind of analogous in some ways in terms of like the toxic behavior and how he communicated to you.
Yeah. They're both narcissists, but one of them wrapped themselves, like, they got the steel ball of narcissism at the center, but one of them wrapped themselves in rubber.
Yeah.
So that, like, you don't necessarily know that there's a steel ball in there of, like, me. I'm not going to budge from here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So,
communal.
Yeah. My therapist suggested he might be a communal narcissist, which there's, like, different subtypes. But someone who, enmeshes themselves in terms of like community work and like, and like,
oh yeah, I remember specifically our talks about like, this is what program money is going towards. Like, yeah, the workshops and whatnot, where it was like, who are you showing off to? Like, I don't know. It felt a lot of things that were discussed by him in our meetings felt self-serving. And I think we talked a lot about how it felt like we were like the pet project.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you're saying now, it's like
Pieces are starting to
pieces
fit
are
together.
fitting together. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's even more that's like super egregious in terms of like the status of the bridge program now, here at our site, is more or less destroyed, kind of because of him. And you know, I feel bad saying that, almost like I don't know why I feel like I shouldn't bag him on this space, but yeah, basically, you know, the similar feelings that he expressed from like me calling him out, I guess he expressed about the bridge program in general, and that's why he just ditched it, more or less.
Yeah, he just abandoned it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
And he said the reason was because he felt blamed. He felt like basically we weren't appreciating him.
Well, that's narcissism. Because he wanted it to serve him. The program existed to serve us.
Not him,
We're the
exactly.
students who need the help. That you're the professor who's the helper.
Yeah. So, anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but basically, I'm wondering where you're sitting now, having left the program, and you put yourself back in with the knowledge that you have now, having left the program, and you put yourself back in the experience you had with your first advisor. How do you think you would view that situation now?
I would have left after the first meeting.
Yeah.
As soon as he started talking about like doubting me without even knowing me, I would have left. Because he like immediately was making prejudgments on my ability because I was a bridge student. He hadn't even looked at my work yet, or what I was capable of, or knowing what I overcame to even make it here and what that says about me. He didn't give a single shit.
That's so rude. He didn't even read your paper.
Yeah.
And he made a judgment about you.
Yeah.
Know anything.
Or maybe even, like, and this is still a thought that lingers with me, maybe he did look at it and was like, oh, like if like an elementary schooler were to like give me a paper on neutron stars, it's like, neutron stars are blue and they are far and they are hot. And I would just been like, huh, yeah, that's cute. I wonder, like, I have no idea. And that always just messes with me and lingers, like, to what degree was he right about me? And I hope to no degree.
I think no degree.
But it's it's unlearning this programming from the system that we're in. I would not put up with it now. But also part of it is that I know now more what I want to do. And when I came in here, I was a little bit more flexible. Because I was like, oh, it can all lead to astronomy in the end. But it's like, I don't know. The path, the further you take something in grad school, the more that narrows your path. And it's like, okay, maybe I really know a lot about neutron star equations of state and like dense nuclear matter, but like that's so hyper specific that the applications to astronomy are very limited. It just felt like I kept getting further from what I wanted by making compromises.
Yeah.
And then you ended up in condensed matter.
I ended up in
which is
condensed
like,
matter,
okay,
yeah.
that's not even...
Yeah, my compromising branches took me completely away. Yeah, and so I think part of it is, obviously you still need to make compromises, but I'm not going to compromise on something so important and vital to me anymore. Because my time is limited, and it means something to me, and I'm not going to waste it anymore on people who think they're wasting their time on me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend so much energy trying to prove myself to doubters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know what I can do. So they can either choose to believe me or they can fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck off.
Like, yeah. I'm hopeful in my uncertainty for the future.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it sounds like you're making progress, right? You're on the path of unlearning some of that programming.
Yeah, it's hard to feel like I'm making progress when there's no physical progress being made.
Yeah.
You can't be like, oh, I've taken this class and I've knocked this off, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, I feel slightly better about managing stress. It's hard to make that into a big victory, but it is in a way.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It is like, for me, I think it's one of the biggest victories.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people don't do that internal work, and we have all these external successes, but in the end, maybe, they're feeling there's a lot of things missing in their life. Like, they're not exactly happy because there's like so much internal uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the period you spend working on yourself, and the more it's like, even if you don't have as much like external validation as like other people may potentially, it's like, I just feel like I don't know, there's like a peace or a calm inside of you. Yeah. That is like a better living of life,
When you get to define your own goals and what you define as, when you get to define success for yourself, is really important. Because I realized that success for me is not getting an A in a class. Success for me is living another year and being happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And know that you deserve to define your own success and follow that path.
Yeah.
Anyone else who like tries to say otherwise, like you said, fuck it. Like, fuck them. Like, it's not okay.
Yeah. So, I'm feeling like we had a pretty full conversation here. There was a question that's somewhere in the back of my mind that I wanted to ask. That's why I'm taking a second here. Right. It's about now. I know that you're taking space to try to heal and to focus on yourself, and there are certain limitations with the area and stuff. But I guess I just wanted to get your sense of like how you subjectively feel comparatively, I guess, now versus when you were in the program. Like, how does it like, because with me and, my 1 foot out the door, like I have fantasies of like, oh, this is what it would feel like once I'm free. And I'm curious, in your experience, what has it been like stepping away?
Being free.
You're never totally free. Because there will still be those days where you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
I was juggling the world on my shoulders before, like stars, planets, atoms, like high energy particles. Like, I was doing cutting edge shit.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like waiting in a counselor's office. It was and is hard. I don't know, feeling like I've slowed down so much. Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
How do you feel comparatively to when you were in the program?
It's hard to say stronger because I feel so much weaker. But whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger as long as it's not super traumatic, which what happened kind of was. But I don't know. At the same time, I am less sure of myself and more sure of what I want. I feel like less sure that I can do it, but more sure what I want.
Why do you feel less sure that you can do it?
Because of all the crap that these people laid on me and the judgments they made about me that were unfounded or untrue or even slightly inaccurate ones add up. It's I don't know, doubting myself still. Like, it's easy to say that I know I'm doing the right thing, but at the same time, I don't know. It's hard. I wish, like I wish I could enter the program with what I knew now, but at the same time, I would not enter this program with what I know now. So, I don't know. My perspective before and after the bridge is that I'm stronger for it and more resistant to overly compromising myself and my goals.
Mm-hmm.
I still understand that I will have to sometimes make changes or adaptations to new situations, but that doesn't mean compromising some very core principles. And I think that's what I did when I said I would come here.
Mm-hmm. So, it sounded like you intended to go back to school, right? If
I
possible.
absolutely intend to go back to school. I just don't know when.
Yeah. So then, my question is, it sounds like there's two things at play here, right? It sounds like, in some ways you found like what your boundaries are. You found like what you're comfortable with accepting and not comfortable with. But also perhaps internalizing some of the judgments that were thrown at you in this experience in the grad program. But if you still intend on going back to school, that must mean what? Like something on average that you feel competent and capable? Or where do you find that strength to like say, I'm going back?
Because I know that in the best situation, what I could offer is unmatched, provided that I'm in the right situation.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying you realize, tell me if this reflects what you're saying, you realize your value if you're given the correct support.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. I can do a lot if I'm given the right tools to succeed. But if I'm constantly met with hurdles or dissuaded, then it's a lot tougher. Yeah. I definitely have gotten more resolve from this. Like I'm almost like pissed off to the point that I want to succeed now, almost to like spite them.
Yeah.
And that was part of what I was thinking for you is like, you're so close now.
Yeah.
Like almost do it to spite them.
Yeah.
Like this is no longer like we did this together, but like, no, this is for you.
Yeah.
Like you did this. That's your data. This is what you learned. This is your project.
Mm-hmm.
He was lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know it's so easy for me to say this from the outside, but sometimes doing it for spite is
Sure, spite can be powerful.
Spite is a powerful motivator sometimes. And people always, you're not supposed to use like negative things as motivators, but like.
Unfortunately for me, spite is like too short term for me, and then like I oscillate from different, so I can never really use it as like a continuous like power source.
Yeah, I do feel like negative emotions have that thing of like they dry up quick.
Yeah.
Like doing something because you're angry, it's hard to stay angry. Like the cost it has on your body is high.
Yeah.
So you naturally just sort of like simmer down and then, yeah. But
Sorry, I derailed that.
you're so close to being done though that like I feel like spite could be enough of like nos to push you over the edge.
Exactly, that's true.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more left.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In my case, like I've processed, like I struggled a lot with like imposter syndrome coming in to the program in the first few years, and I'm starting to realize that maybe that's just, you know, internalizing some of the things that they said, right, and not really a reflection of how I feel about myself. Because lately I've been feeling like super competent and capable, and I'm like, I know I can do this, and the question I've been wrangling with is like, but do I want to? Like, is that something I'm willing to like put myself through? And lately I've been feeling like, yeah, I could probably do it, and I kind of want to do it. I wish more of the day-to-day wasn't as shitty, but I'd like to see it through. I'd prefer to see it through than not. But yeah, also, you know, fuck them. You know, also, there is a room for spite. And for me, I think I can use my anger in a pretty productive and healthy way for the most part.
Channel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is a place for it. Yeah. But, so, I think we've had a pretty good conversation. I'm wondering if there's any loose ends, anything that either of you want to discuss more about or had any specific questions before we finish it up.
No, I think I've said what I wanted to say, except maybe earlier when I said like using the whole universe as an observatory. You guys hear about the nanograv thing? Yeah, that's so cool. And so last summer when I was at Arecibo, the guy who was leading our group, because I was in the pulsar group, because I was like, hey, I know about neutron stars. I want to learn about how to actually observe them, like what I wanted to be taught this whole time. And the guy who led our group, he's a part of Nanograv. And so like me and another person who were like more in the know about neutron stars and pulsar timing array stuff were like, can you let us know anything? And he was like, didn't hear it from me, but we're going to have a big announcement soon. And we were like, tell us more. And he was like, no. And we're just like, okay, Nanograv's got something cooking. And so I knew when like a couple weeks ago they were like, we got a big announcement coming. I was like, we got the background, which is just so cool to me. We used a galaxy-wide array of stars to look at ripples in space-time that are so minute. It's the coolest thing to me, because we can't ever build something with that sensitivity. We just take advantage of the physics of our universe, which is the coolest.
Yeah. Well, my research is in the QFT side, like using QFTs as to model like a black hole binary mergers.
Oh, wow.
So it's like then taking it to the classical limit and then doing precision computations of different observables. Shit. And then we can match it with all this new data coming in.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's pretty
That's
cool.
So cool. Wow, I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, definitely. We can talk later.
Cool. How
It'll be
feeling?
another podcast, I guess.
Any last questions? How you feeling?
Feeling good. Yeah. I guess just, I mean, to think of like your future, whatever, what would be like your dream of like what your next steps would be?
Or
even long term?
Long term, I don't know what the intermediate steps are, but the long term goal is I want to work at STSI, Space Telescope Science Institute. They are the people who run the day-to-day for the Hubble, the James Webb, and the upcoming Nancy Grace Roman. So like all of the professors and researchers will send in to STSI like, I want this, this, and this. We'll prioritize the list based on like the observing schedule, what's the most efficient, and then do it. Like I want to be in the control room like, all right, let's get the pointing for this object. Like that would be the dream. However, Baltimore is very expensive. So we're going to have to take a couple steps there first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I don't know how much of it is what school has done to me, but I don't know if I'm cut out for my own research. I don't know that. And part of it is that I really haven't been given the opportunity to do the research that I'm super passionate about and interested in. So I don't know if I see myself becoming a researcher and like a professor and continuing this cycle, or if I just want to go to private and be content with my life and just be like, all right, I'm doing support science. It's still meaningful, but like I get to go home at the end of the day and be done. You know, I don't know yet which one, but ultimately I want to be contributing to astronomy.
Yeah. Like when you say if you're cut out for it, I guess, what do you mean exactly by cut out for it?
I mean, I don't necessarily mean like, am I smart enough?
Yeah.
Is it, do I want that?
Yeah, exactly.
All the things that living in academia entails, the bureaucracy of being a professor and dealing with crusty old people stuck in their ways, or like you're going to be moving fairly frequently until you can get tenure somewhere, or like if you're a postdoc and like your work is never over, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I'm cut out for that. I don't know if I want that.
Yeah, if you want that, yeah.
I mean, not that I can't do it, but that it's not compatible with the life that I want.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same questions too, because I don't know if I want to have the life of academia the way that the structure is right now, and the values and how toxic it is.
Yeah.
Like I want to change it so badly, like there's like this part of me is like, I just want to make it so much better, but like being in this program just in a way is, I don't know, maybe more jaded, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like this, I don't know, this idealized version of me. It's like, oh, I can do it. I can change the system. And it's like, I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, it's a big goal.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, I believe you could do it.
And it also doesn't have to be, can you change the whole system, but can you help people as well? Like, do you think that you could make it easier for your students to not go through what you've gone through?
Yeah.
And so that could also be a victory. Maybe you don't change the whole system, but you changed how some people went through it and you helped them.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you can do it.
Cool. Okay, well, I guess we're going to round off the podcast here then. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you again for coming on, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate your time and sharing your story with us. And so
do you want to plug anything?
Yeah,
before
is there?
you go?
That's a fair point.
Okay. I'll plug my Instagram because I'm posting daily, either birds or skate clips, or currently I have a lot of travel photos that I'm posting. It's Michael J. Jaramillo, with no spaces. But I think my name might be in the description, so if you can't spell it,
yeah, and I could put a link in the show
okay.
notes and stuff.
Yeah, that's
And I've seen some of the photos, and he's very talented, everyone. So
Thank
please
you.
check it out.
Prints are available.
Good.
Cool. Yeah. If you find it, purchase from him.
We'll put a link in
Yeah.
the description for everything.
Yeah. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.